I never thought a leather-bound notebook could hold enough power to dismantle a literal empire. But as I sit here looking at the ashes of a dynasty, I realize that some secrets are meant to be documented, and others are meant to burn everything down. Was I wrong for being the one to light the match? Or would you have done the exact same thing if you realized your entire existence was built on a web of stolen identities and medical malpractice? Tell me if I'm the villain here, because by the time this story ends, a family that owned half the state is in ruins, and I'm the only one left standing with the truth. It all started when I was hired as a live-in caretaker for Eleanor Vance. To the public, the Vance family was untouchable, old money, philanthropists, and owners of one of the most prestigious private clinics in the country that had operated from the late 70s through the early 90s. Eleanor was the matriarch, a woman who, even in the fog of advanced dementia, carried herself with a terrifying, rigid grace. My job was simple: keep her comfortable, manage her medications, and organize the massive library in their estate while the family prepared to sell the property. But Eleanor wasn't just any patient. She was a woman who had spent 40 years as the head matron and lead midwife at the Vance Clinic. She had seen every birth, every high society scandal, and every hushed-up mistake that happened within those sterile walls. For the first few months, things were quiet. I spent my days reading to her, and my nights exploring the labyrinthine hallways of the Vance Manor. It was during a particularly bad storm in late October that the first crack appeared in the facade. Eleanor was having a sundowning episode, pacing her room and screaming about the ledgers and how the bloodlines weren't straight. I tried to calm her down, but she grabbed my arm with a strength that shouldn't have been possible for a woman of 85. She hissed at me to go to the floorboards under the mahogany desk in the library, claiming that if the founders found out what she'd written, they'd bury her alive. I initially dismissed it as a hallucination, but the desperation in her eyes was haunting. The next day, while the rest of the family was at a charity gala, curiosity got the better of me. I moved the heavy desk, pried up the loose wood, and found it, a thick, black, waterproof case containing 12 handwritten journals. These weren't just medical logs. Eleanor had recorded every single birth at the Vance Clinic in obsessive, terrifying detail. She hadn't just noted times and weights. She had recorded the real parents versus the official parents. As I flipped through the pages, my blood ran cold. The journals detailed a sophisticated baby-swapping ring fueled by the Vance family's desire to keep their purity and power. If a wealthy donor's baby died at birth, Eleanor and the clinic directors would swap it with a healthy infant from a mother they deemed disposable, unwed teens, poor immigrants, or women with no family to back them up. The scale was massive. We are talking about hundreds of children over 3 decades. I saw names I recognized from the news, politicians, CEOs, and even the current head of the Vance family, Julian. According to the notes, Julian wasn't a Vance by blood at all. He was the son of a local waitress who had been told her baby was stillborn in 1982. I spent weeks cross-referencing the notes with public records, and the deeper I went, the more sickened I became. Eleanor had been the architect of this misery, but she had kept the notes as a form of insurance against the family that employed her. She knew that if they ever tried to discard her, she could ruin them. But now, she couldn't remember why she had them, and I was the one holding the explosive. I looked at the photos of the Vance family on the walls, the portraits of Julian and his parents, and I realized I was living in a house built on the stolen lives of hundreds of families. I felt like I was breathing in toxic air. I started reaching out to some of the names in the books, using a burner phone and a fake identity, just to see if the stories lined up. Every single person I spoke to described the same thing: a complicated birth at the Vance Clinic, a sudden tragedy, and a staff that was all too eager to usher them out the door. So that is the situation I found myself in. I was a $25 an hour caretaker, holding the digital and physical evidence that would rewrite the history of an entire region and potentially send dozens of people to prison, including the very people who signed my paychecks. I knew that if I went to the police, the Vance legal team would have the evidence suppressed or stolen before I could even finish my statement. I had to make a choice. Do I keep my mouth shut, take the journals, and disappear, or do I orchestrate a collapse so public that no amount of money could fix it? Before I tell you the absolutely insane way I decided to leak this information and the confrontation that nearly cost me my life, I want you to pause. Stop right now and comment below. What would you have done? Would you have stayed silent to protect yourself? Or would you have risked everything to give those mothers their truth back? I decided that the only way to do this was to go nuclear. I didn't go to the cops. I went to the one person the Vances hated more than anyone, the investigative journalist who had been trying to sue them for medical malpractice for years. But I didn't just give him the books. I waited for the Vance family's 100th Anniversary Gala, a televised event where they were set to announce a massive new expansion of their medical empire. I had spent weeks scanning every single page of Eleanor's journals into a cloud drive. On the night of the gala, while Julian Vance was on stage giving a speech about legacy and the sanctity of family, I used the estate's high-speed fiber optic connection to blast a link to that drive to every major news outlet, every person mentioned in the books, and every guest attending the gala via their public social media tags. The chaos was instantaneous. I watched on the library television as people in the ballroom started looking at their phones. The murmurs turned into gasps, then shouts. On stage, Julian's face went pale as his own assistant ran up and whispered in his ear. He looked toward the camera, and for a second, I thought he was looking right at me. I knew I had to get out. I grabbed Eleanor's original journals and headed for the garage, but Julian's younger brother, Marcus, intercepted me in the mudroom. He wasn't the polished businessman he pretended to be. He was a terrified man who knew his life was over. He tried to take the bag from me, screaming that I was destroying lives, that these people were better off in the families they were given. He actually had the nerve to say that the Vance family had done these children a favor by giving them a life of luxury. I looked him dead in the eyes and told him that no amount of money replaces a mother's right to hold her own child. We struggled, and I ended up having to use my heavy flashlight to get him off me. I ran to my car and drove until I hit the city limits, watching the news alerts blow up my phone the entire way. The aftermath was a bloodbath. The journals contained enough specific detail, dates, blood types, even descriptions of birthmarks, that DNA testing confirmed the swaps within weeks. The Vance clinic was seized by federal agents. Julian Vance was forced to step down within 48 hours, and when the DNA results proved he wasn't the biological heir, the legal battle over the Vance fortune turned into a piranha tank. The powerful family wasn't just ruined, they were deleted. Eleanor passed away in a state-run facility a month later, never truly understanding that the insurance she hid under the floorboards had finally been cashed in. Hundreds of families are now in the process of reuniting or at least finding closure, though many of the mothers have already passed away, never knowing that their babies didn't actually die on those cold hospital tables. The moral of this story is that legacy isn't something you can steal or manufacture in a lab. You can build the tallest towers and the most respected names, but if the foundation is made of lies and stolen lives, it will eventually crumble under its own weight. I lost my job and I spent a year looking over my shoulder, but I wouldn't change a single thing. Every time I see a news segment about a Vance baby finally meeting their biological siblings, I know I did the right thing. Like this video if you were on my side and think the Vance family got exactly what they deserved. Subscribe for more stories like this, and please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'm still reading through the reactions to see if anyone thinks I went too far. I'll see you all in the next story.